All right, this is Brain Physiology and Function, Section C lecture. Our prioritized standards are 3C this time. Objectively, we're going to differentiate between the three layers of the brain. Now, the brain is split up into three major layers. We have the hindbrain, which is in the back, thus the term hindbrain, the midbrain, which is, going to be in the middle, and also the forebrain, which is the big part on the top. Now, the hindbrain helps to regulate autonomic functions, relay sensory information, coordinate movement, and maintain balance and equilibrium. As the name might suggest, again, this is found toward the back and also the bottom of the brain. Now, being the most primitive part of the brain, the hindbrain encompasses the most basic aspects of life, like maintaining autonomic functions, relaying sensory information, coordinating movement. So, like, what can your dog do? This is the part of the brain that's going to control those basic things that, like dogs, cats, pretty much all animals can do that aren't necessarily like playing chess. Now, the hindbrain is made up of the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the cerebellum. Now, the medulla oblongata, which you might have heard of on the movie The Water Boy, is actually a control center for respiratory, cardiovascular, and digestive functions. This operates on kind of like an autopilot, keeping the body functioning without any conscious thought necessary. Again, this is going to be found kind of in this lower region is where the medulla oblongata is going to be found. Now, on the movie, when he was insulting something being wrong with his medulla oblongata, it doesn't make sense because it has nothing to do with your behavior. Now, the pons, this regulates brain activity during sleep and also during dreaming. So this is a brainstem structure that's going to be found in more of the upper region of that brainstem area. And then we also have the cerebellum, which is responsible for coordinated movements to allow for complex movements without consciously thinking about the details. So like when you're walking, dancing, drinking from a cup, there's a lot of little motions that are going into this, but we don't usually consciously think about all the different motions we have to do those things, because again, that's controlled by the cerebellum that basically controls those things. The name cerebellum actually means little brain. It is attached to that brain stem. It's found in the upper region and also aids in helping us keep a series of events in order and involved in producing habitual responses on cue. Now, the midbrain, again, kind of the part there in the middle, the midbrain, helps to support regulation of movement, alertness, and temperature regulation, and processes auditory and visual information, and is made up of several smaller structures that are located in the area connecting the midbrain to the forebrain. Now, the midbrain helps people locate events in space, known as spatial awareness, knowing where your body is in relation to objects or to other people. So that's why you're not like running into people all the time, because again, the midbrain helps you be aware of where your body is compared to other people's. Now, the midbrain also houses the rectangular formation. So here is our rectangular formation. Oh, it's a rectangle. That's clever. Which exerts some control over which sensory signals reach the cerebellum or the cerebrum and come into one's conscious attention, keeping the brain alert and attentive to new stimulation. So it's kind of a pencil-shaped structure. It forms at the core of the brainstem, runs down the spinal cord and up to the thalamus, which we'll talk about briefly. And then we also have the forebrain. And the forebrain processes sensory information, helps with reasoning and problem solving, and regulates autonomic, endocrine, and motor functions. So our higher level thinking is usually more the forebrain. Now, the forebrain includes brain structures that make up the limbic system, which supports a variety of brain functions, including emotion, behavior, and long-term memory, which include the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, and also the hippocampus. Now, the thalamus, this is the brain's central relay station. So nearly all sensory and motor messages are actually going to go into and out of the brain through the thalamus, which again is kind of located between the cerebral cortex and the midbrain. So that's where that's located. Now, the hypothalamus, this regulates many bodily functions, including appetite, thirst, body temperature control, and also regulates the body's responses during emotional responses. We also have the amygdala. This one's involved in memory and emotion, particularly there's fear and aggression, those types of emotions. And finally, we have the hippocampus, which is involved in long-term memory, not short-term, long-term memory. Now, the forebrain also includes the cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain and is made up of the two cerebral hemispheres, which we're actually going to talk about in the next lecture video in depth because it is so complex. All right, that concludes brain physiology and function, section C lecture. Our prioritized standard again was 3C, and objectively now we can differentiate between the three layers of the brain.